All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unbounded Growth. This is our 10th episode of the season. Oh yes, this has been a little bit of a slower season compared to the other season. If we're in a different season, it'll probably be episode maybe 20 or something like that. We've been definitely recording at a slower rate, and for the first time in a very long time, at least I think since the beginning of this season.
Yeah,
that
I think it's been over 3-4 months.
Yeah,
maybe.
over 3-4 months
Yeah.
now since
Wow.
Adam and I had an opportunity to record together again. The first time we recorded together was the first episode, and then the episode that we had with David. Those were the first two. But yeah, we are, we're back here. Adam made his way like an hour drive type of stuff.
Yeah, it was,
so that we can.
It was quite a drive, actually. I kept on going. I was like, I'm not getting there.
I know it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, we excited. We're excited to be back. We're excited to bring to you another episode. We started this amazing book here by Pastor Craig Groeschel, Winning the War in Your Mind. And last time I started explaining a few things about this book, and this episode is the second part of the book. We probably talk about two chapters, maybe three, if we have enough time to get to the third chapter. Or if it's your first time here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you listen to us on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like, leave your comments, your question. We're always excited to receive those. And as well, if you listen to us on your favorite podcasting platform, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to give us a like. Don't forget to give us a follow. It definitely goes a long way. And if you have not had a chance to check our website, www.unboundedgrowth.org, you can learn a lot more about us, about what we do and why we do what we do. And a big shout out to our official sponsor, Realtor Judith, for the amazing work she's doing out there. We've been talking about this for a minute. If you need any real estate, I'm trying to have a tautology here. If you have any real estate needs, right? You're trying to rent, you're trying to buy a house, or you have a house and you're trying to find a property manager, Realtor Judith is definitely the person you want to go to. She's an amazing lady and a very, very pleasant one to work with. I've had, my wife and I really had a very good experience working with her, and we've always had some amazing experience working with her. So definitely recommend her, and we appreciate all the sponsorship. Also, today, big shout out to my brother Christian. I know I always talk a lot about my brother Zeph. I have an older brother, Christian, who was also a very good friend of mine. He actually gave us these stands here that we're using. If of course you're watching on YouTube, you can see our new microphone stands. He gave us as a gift for my birthday, and we really appreciate that, Christian. Big shout out to you and thank you for everything. All right, with that being said, I think we're going to dive into today's episode. Maybe hear a little song from Adam. I know it's been a busy summer for him. And congratulations on your dissertation presentation.
Thank you. That was a big step for my PhD. Mm-hmm. So the dissertation proposal is the very last exam that you can fail as a PhD candidate or as a PhD student in general. After you've passed that, you become a PhD candidate. Mm-hmm. So at this point, there is no more failing that you can actually be expecting.
Right.
You still have a challenge, of course. You have to publish papers, you have to write your actual dissertation and so on. But as far as failing again or being kicked out of a program, for example, for that matter, is not something that you put on the table anymore. At this point, you have shown that you understand your topic well enough and you can move forward in that. So that part is how I just came from Seattle, where I gave, I might say, one of my best talks so far that I have given. I know this year I've just been traveling a few different places to go give talks, but what happened in Seattle is I believe in God, or if you're joining for the first time, and I'm a Christian. I'm a devoted Christian. I believe in Christ, Jesus, and the dynamic of things, the way they happen in Seattle is just in a special way. Mm-hmm. First, I was invited at Salvation Christian Academy over in Tacoma, where I spoke about what it means to be a Christian Scientist. And that talk to me is definitely the best talk that I have given so far. The audience was from 4-year-old to 16-year-olds.
Wow, that's amazing.
I had to connect and create a rapport with the 4-year-old. At the same time, I am doing the same thing with a 16-year-old. So come up with something you can say that a 4-year-old will find it valuable, and a 16-year-old can also find value in it. And I created that rapport and it happened also. Even parents came to actually watch me speak when they heard that their kid is having a guest speaker. Parents came over, and I got to connect to parents, and that community there, it's an amazing community. Most of them are from Russia and Ukraine and Eastern Europe that migrated to the Northwest. And I just had these amazing conversations with them, and just the talk when I was up there and just delivering that talk and having these kids ask me all type of questions and having a conversation of what do you want to be when you grow up, and going through that was amazing. And then of course that same week I spent some time relationship building, which is most people go and do networking, and I stopped doing that. I do not network. If you know me, you know that I don't network anymore. If I'm interested in actually getting to know you, I try to get to know you. I don't just get your number and then I forget about you until the day I'm going to need you. I don't do that. I don't get your LinkedIn and just we are connected on LinkedIn.
I struggle with that.
Yeah,
I struggle the same way that you're describing.
Yeah.
Just get someone's information, and just in case you need them someday. Like even when I need you, it's kind of hard for me to reach out to you if we've never really had time to connect.
We don't have a rapport.
It's kind of challenging.
It's very hard. So I don't do those stuff anymore. I build relationships. I connect with people. I get to know them as individuals. I know what's passionate them. One thing that I've discovered doing that is that it opens me up to opportunities, and it opens up those people to opportunities too. So what happens is normally when you're networking, you have to have something very active that you need from somebody when you reach out to them. But when you have built a relationship with somebody, you know them well enough in such a way that when you come across something, if I see something that would interest Mark, as soon as I see it, my brain is wired in such a way that Mark is the first person that comes to mind. And a lot of my opportunities have come that way because somebody has told somebody else that I know a guy. And if I know a guy, then they'll reach out to me. And that because I spend time not just trying to network with them, but build an actual relationship with them. And I spent a lot of time in Seattle bonding over different things. I bonded with a friend who is Muslim. We bonded over Christ. And you'll be surprised. We had a conversation over Christ, and we opened that up, and he asked me, how do I read the Bible? Where do I get started to read the Bible from? And we had that type of conversation. Next day I spoke at that school. I was able to connect with those kids over there, and I created a really great relationship with my friend David over there, who is a teacher there, and our friendship is growing, and that's amazing. I really am loving it. The next day, I met a few more people, and we are building even a stronger relationship, coming up with things that really gonna make an impact for the next generation and for our world as we move forward. And so, just that in general, I spent so much of my time for the last 4 months that we haven't been able to meet. I've just been really expanding the horizon when it comes to relationship building. Also working a lot on myself, improving my communication skills a lot. I've read 16 Laws of Communication by John C. Maxwell, 7 Principles of Public Speaking. I've really just spent a tremendous amount of time building myself up this way and applying some of these principles that are in this book. I'm connecting actually a lot with with James Clear,
Mhm.
James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Right.
A lot of the concepts are the same, at the core are the same. Here, Craig Groeschel is bringing a Christian perspective to it. And it's something that, regardless whether you are a Christian or you are a non-Christian, this, even on your particular religion, even in Hinduism, I was having a conversation with a friend who's Hindu, who's raised as Hindu. And we're talking about some of these principles that India is now the 7th largest economy in the world. They're better than the UK now.
Right.
So you can think about, they're putting people on the moon. That's how good India has become. And it's now just the simple fact that people are developing technology or they have a lot of people and so on. It's more of they have principles that their societies are built on, and they're based on faith, and they're also based on basic values that they can build from there. And they've been leveraging those values for the last 2,000 years, 3,000 years. And the rest of civilization actually is benefiting from people from India, just because they've put into action or into work some of these values that they've developed through a year. So I've been through a lot of things during the last 4 months, but I'm really just happy and glad to be back here and to be recording together again.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely great to catch up again. Even to your last point, just I usually do this exercise of reading Bible cover to cover, and I started doing that again about a month ago. And I was reading, spent a lot of time reading the book of Genesis, and then I started reading the book of Exodus. One thing I realized, and I was trying to step away from my Christian gown and just look at it as a regular person who would just pick up a book and read.
Yeah.
I realized one thing. I was like, man, the principles and the laws and everything that God is teaching, and like the story of Joseph, for example, and how he taught this economical principle to the king of Egypt back then, the Pharaoh, about how he was going to save money for the good years of food for the good years, and eventually it goes on to like install a tax system because
That's
people no longer had the money to buy food. So he told them, I'll give you food for free, but from this year on, every year when you have money, 1/10 of what you get will be for the Pharaoh.
Wow.
Because he bought back their lands. And I sat down there, I was like, man, if people were just living in the world and they didn't have a book or anything, they didn't have any laws, and they stumble up on the Bible, I can understand why people will fight to preserve that book.
Yeah.
I can understand why people will be like, oh my God, we wanna hold on to this. And not even from a Christian perspective, just from a general understanding type of perspective. So I feel like this was very, very interesting. And as you know, this season we've been talking a lot about the mind. And we started with the book by what is it called again? James something.
Jim Allen.
Jim Allen. James Allen, Jim Allen, and I always have the tendency of calling him James Clear. Their names always kind of Jim Allen. Where he was talking about the power of your mind as a man thinketh. The whole book pretty much focuses on the power of your mind, telling you about what are the things that you can do and you can accomplish with your mind. But now, the good thing it talks about is it shows you how your thoughts can affect your life positively and negatively. One thing I like about what Craig Groeschel does here is that it goes beyond the why. It tells you the how to do it. And it really breaks it down. James Clear talks a lot about habits, right? And it breaks it down and it shows you how to build habit. And Craig Groeschel goes a step further to tell you about how do you go about building these new thoughts, right? How do you go about doing a diagnosis of your own mind? Like you are your own doctor. You are going through your mind, because here's the reality, and I always tell people this: whether you're visiting a doctor, whether you're visiting a psychologist or whatever, they can only treat you based on what you tell them.
Yeah.
So in other words, they just know as much as you tell them.
Pretty much.
And the only person who knows and understands you better is you. And unless you spend enough time with yourself, trying to understand you, trying to understand how your mind works, trying to understand what are these dominating thoughts. Yes, the doctor, the psychologist, and everybody can help you figure that out. But until you put the effort into it, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work. And that's why this book requires you not only to read it as a novel or something. Unless you really apply the principles, you go through the questions, the exercises, then we put a free link. Again, a disclaimer here, we do not own that link. We do not put it out there. We found it on the internet and we're just sharing it with y'all. So the day it goes down is not on us, all right? All right. But of course, we encourage you to get the copy of the book. But it was a link of the workbook, right? If you listen to us and then you go do the exercises that are in that book, you just start realizing how slowly by slowly, your thoughts start changing. The way you even understand yourself. I'm reading this book and I was looking at it here by Dr. Caroline Leaf. She's also a Christian writer, but she's a neuroscientist. So a lot of what she writes here, and I'll tell you one thing, one of the reasons why I like sometimes reading scientific work by Christians is just because I know that, they will stay somewhat on a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
Just for my own sake. I mean, if you're okay with a review, that's okay. Sometimes all the views I'm reading, I'm going like, I don't really know if I agree with this,
48 laws of power.
Right?
I think I made it to like my 13th law or something.
Man, I made it past the introduction. I was like, I can't. I read the summary, right?
Yeah.
The first 2 pages, it talks about the summary, and I just felt like I was like, no. And people have good argument for reading the book. I just couldn't find a good reason enough.
My dad sent me another copy of it in French. I was like, okay.
I was like, that's interesting. So, Dr. Caroline Leaf, she wrote this book. It's called Think, Learn, and Succeed, Understanding How to Use Your Brain and Your Mind. And she's giving all these psychological neuroscientist perspective about even understanding a thought. What is a thought, right? What is a thought at the end of the day? And I discovered through this book that thoughts are actually physically imprinted on your brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy when you think about it. When you think that a thought is actually something, like if they open your mind and they could read thought, they can be like, okay, this line here, this is the exact stupid thought that you just had a second ago. Or this one here is the idea that will change the world.
Yeah.
And that's why you start seeing how important it is for us to understand, to improve, and to work on our thoughts. And Craig Groeschel here gives us a lot of tips. So in the first part here, right, just giving a little summary of what we talked about already. We talked about the Rewire Principle. We finished the whole first part, which was 3 chapters. And the first one was your thought audit. That's not the title of the chapter. That's the summary to me of the chapter, where he asks you to do a thought audit. And then the second one, it says identify the lies, right? If you have certain thoughts that have been running in your mind, you need to identify where did they come from. And then the third one, it talked about replacing the old lies with the truth. Yep. Whatever thought that you have that's running in your mind that you do not want to keep, how do you go about replacing that with the truth? And then, now, this is our question of the week. I read it down here, and you can see I always prepare my notes. I always type and stuff like that. Otherwise, I start talking about carrots and bananas all day long. But our question of the week is this: if you are given your whole year's salary in one paycheck, how long will you last with it? Yeah. If let's say January 1st, we're not talking about here winning the lottery. We're not talking about here getting $1 billion. We've seen people doing that and still ending up broke. And I was reading this from Mr. Yusen's book, and I definitely can't wait to have Yusen on the podcast so we can really dive in and talk about this book. But the question remains: if they take your whole salary, your whole year's salary, your bonus, your paychecks, everything, they combine all of it in one lump sum check, and they give it to you on January 1st. The only condition is that you have to work at the company until the end of the year. How long will you last with that money? And the reason why we're asking this question is because the way you spend your money, the way you will use that money, will determine in a lot of instances your priorities.
Yeah.
In a lot of instances, that will determine where your mind is at. And it will also reveal you to you. This is the reality. Sometimes you feel like you know yourself, but you don't, right? And you wonder, and this is what we were talking about today. You wonder, why is it that I keep on falling into this pattern of habits? Why is it that I promise myself that I will never do this, I will never say that again, I will never yell at my kids, I will never use another credit card, I'll never swap my credit card. No, ever again. And then the very next weekend, after you made that confession, you find yourself swapping your credit card. Why is it that we keep on repeating the things that we've promised to ourselves that we never do?
It's actually interesting. It falls in. I'm reading a book by JP Jonathan Pokluda on why do I do the things that I don't want to do.
Right.
It's interesting. He actually puts a lot of those perspective, and his writing style is almost the same style as Craig Groeschel here. And I think we're gonna get a chance to go through his book and kind of just study him. And what you said earlier made me think of. There's a guy, his name is Abe Blaise from Congo.
That's a funny guy.
Abe Blaise from Congo said something really cool. He said that sometimes people don't sin for the lack of opportunity.
That's true.
Sometimes you are holy because you never had the opportunity to sin.
Yep.
Every month you get your salary. That is, you set a budget, right? For this is gonna go into my rent. This money gonna go into, I don't know, whatever the expenses that you have to make. But then at the same time, right, you you never got an opportunity where like you have your entire salary at the very beginning of the year. Of the year. Imagine you start January 1st. They're like, hey, this is your money. Like, you still think about budgeting and whatever the stuff that you have thought before. Now you get a chance.
Right.
An opportunity, all the lessons you've been giving to people, like, hey, saving money and whatever. Even saving money, the way it goes is that out of your paycheck, you know that $500 is the money that I put aside for, I don't know, my kid going to college or whatever. You already have that set up.
Right.
But what if you have a compounded the $500 for the rest of the year and you have no other source of income? You have to work full time. And so how would you do it when you're given your entire salary for the rest of the year?
And that's what we study today in this book as we dive into it. So the second part here, it talks about recognizing your ruts, digging the trenches of truth, and also learning to ruminate. So I like what it talks about in chapter 4, right? When it starts with recognizing your rights or whatever it is, recognizing the problem or the issues that are deep inside of you. And I mentioned something earlier, which I think we spend a lot of time talking about, is introducing yourself to you.
Yeah.
I realize that a lot of us, we actually do not know ourselves as we should. And the reason is simple. We don't spend enough time with ourselves. We don't spend enough time thinking, and in this world, which is technology driven, the first thing most of us do in the morning, you wake up, what do? Check your phone.
Yep, pretty much.
And then you start having all these ideas coming to you from your device, dictating how your day is going to go. If someone sends you a wrong email in the morning, all of a sudden your day is ruined. If someone sends you a beautiful thing in the morning, all of a sudden your day is great. And you never spend enough time to really think about your priorities, to think about what you like, to think about the things that you do care about. And until you spend time with yourself, you will not know yourself. So in this first part of the book here, not the first part, but the second part, the first chapter here, it talks about understanding the source of the problem, right? And this is where we got this question of the week from even the book that I'm reading, Fear by Yusuf Abdullah, where it talks about the story of this lady who was given $1 million and within a year had nothing to show for it. Not only she did not have the money, but she didn't have anything to show for it. Her problem was not money. Her problem was not money. Because most of the times, even when we talk about money, we think that only if I can get more money, then all my problems will be solved. But if you ever found yourself that you start working, let's say you're making $15 an hour, and then, you get a promotion or you get another job and you start making $20 an hour, but you're still in debt. You're still struggling the way you're struggling while you're making 15. And then you make 25, but you're still in debt. And you start making 50 an hour and you're still in debt. Mm-hmm. And then you start making, at some point, it's not the money the problem. You can get all the money in the world you want. And we were talking about this with Adam before we started recording here. When you get more money, sometimes you get more expenses. If at this point of your life, if you can only afford to buy, let's say, for example, a handbag for $20 and you're only making $100 a day, for example, you'll feel like $20 is a lot of money. But then when you make $1 million, you'll feel like $20 is no longer worth it. You start buying things that are a little bit more expensive. So until you've adjusted the behavior, the root of the behavior, until you've adjusted the thought, because at the end, the thought is the root of every behavior.
Pretty much.
It's like, it's like a tree, right? And at the very root, there's your thought. The behavior is pretty much like the leaves of the tree.
Yeah, it's actually the fruit. Because the behavior is mostly the action.
The action,
it's the stuff that you're doing.
Exactly.
Right. So it's basically just the fruit of the actions of the thoughts that you have been entertaining for a very long time.
Right. And most of the times, Adam, what I see with us, not I won't say people, because we also part of this, right? Yeah. We deal with this, we read these books, not only learn stuff from it, but we also apply this stuff in our own lives, is that we try to fix the behavior without even knowing what is the root cause of this behavior. And now here's what happens when you try to adjust the behavior, which is contrary to what you believe, right? Let's say, for example, you say, okay, I will not spend anymore. And you take all the measures, you do everything, and you say, you're trying to address your spending behaviors. But deep inside of you, you still do not think as a person who doesn't spend. Guess what will happen? You will change the behavior today, and tomorrow you just find a new way of doing the same behavior and maybe finding excuses to cover that up.
Yeah, and that draws me to the book as we talk about the idea of thought and what you mentioned earlier, going by the definition of thought. And Craig Groeschel is basically putting it in this way, that your brain get wired a certain type of way once you have entertained a certain thought. Once you have a specific thought, for that thought to actually become something that you are aware of, your brain has to redesign itself, and it has to come together for that to actually be possible. And he put it this way. He say, like, every thought you have produces a neurochemical change in your mind. Your brain literally redesign itself around the thought. So in the idea is that your brain is actually creating a certain new path, a certain new connection. Your neurons are firing in a way that it's creating a new connection that because our brains are very efficient, right? So they're now even the human brain is designed basically in a very lazy way, in such a way that once something has already been done, once you have had a thought, it's very easy for you to just reproduce that thought.
Exactly.
Once you have accomplished something, and this pretty much goes for anything else later. If you have gotten done once, chances are you are always gonna be able to get it done.
Exactly.
Because your brain, it's just that part where it clicks. And that connection, and it all comes from a thought. I see that in my work pretty much almost every day. My work is a thought-based work. So it's I spend 90% of my time thinking and the 10% of the time doing experiments. There's a reason behind that. I was trained differently. I was trained to be an engineer, to be a problem solver. In problem solving is you go by solutions. You go by thoughts. So I spend a lot of time, instead of doing a lot of trials and error, try here, do this, try here and do this, and then try to retrace what you tried before, what had worked and stuff, or you got to a point where you don't know what worked and
what did not.
And know what didn't. You don't know how many changes you've added, but you have a final product. I personally was not trained that way. I do admire a lot of my scientist friends that really spend a lot of time in the lab just doing experiments. I don't. I do one experiment per week. And I spend the 90% of my time thinking about the final product. How do I want it to look like? And I spend all the time like designing, being able to explain why this happened, how it happened. I create thought processes. I wire my brain in such a way that everything is turned around the thought. So if I have to reproduce something, I've already created neural pathways in my head that can fire again, and I can be able to reproduce it a million more times because everything has been carefully designed. Every part of my technology is carefully designed and connected in such a way that, okay, this means this means this. Even if you wake me up at midnight, I would know why this line is there because it's a product of a thought. And this is what Craig Groeschel is driving here. He's saying that your behavior, anything that matter that you actually gonna end up doing with your hands or being a part of or anything you might even believe is a direct product of a certain pathway that the thought has created in your brain. So, and the more that pathway is entertained, the more actions you're gonna end up doing.
And exactly, Adam, to your point, and even to kind of I'll quote what to paraphrase what Craig Groeschel says here. In other words, the reason why we behave the way we do, the reason why we keep on returning to certain routine, sometimes it's not as easy as, I just want to quit this and done. No. Because of these pathways, and I talked about that in the last episode, this analogy where it's like, you walk in a forest, right? Or you walk on the grass and you keep on walking on the same grass every day, the same path every day. At some point, it creates something where you're stepping. And that's exactly what happens in your mind. And when you decide, okay, you know what? I want to change my pathway. Do you think that goes away right away? No. It takes time for it to be erased. And that's why it becomes challenging to build some habits. The problem is most of us, as we were just saying a minute ago here, most of us try to change behaviors, which are just the fruits, without changing the root of the behavior. And the root of the behavior most of the time would be in your thoughts. Craig Groeschel says here that if you want to win the war in your mind, you have to be willing to rewire your thought patterns, to rewire our brain. And rewiring a brain is actually an exercise. It's been proven. At this time around, I actually went into the science of it. It's been proven that it actually takes the brain about 63 days to create a new pathway. Not to create a new pathway, but to solidify a pathway. Because a pathway can be created today, but then if you don't use it in the next 2 weeks, it's gone, right? That's why you start with a habit and then within a few days you abandon and then it goes. And in order for you to maintain the habits that you have created, you have to maintain the pattern of thoughts that will sustain the habit. Because if you try to behave in a way that is contrary to the way you think, you are only fooling yourself, because it's just a matter of time before you return to your very old patterns. The other thing it says here, it says that the same message in your mind, and this is what Adam was talking about, the same message in your mind repeated multiple times will create a neural pathway. Now, I want to make a point here where I probably don't agree with a lot of people, and a lot of people don't agree with me, and it's okay. It's okay, right? My mentor, Pastor Jean-Jacques, always tells me we can disagree without being disagreeable, right? we can have two different opinions without fighting. That's why I tell people, hey, if I vote Democrat, you vote Republican. If I vote Republican, you vote Democrat. We can still have a conversation, right? We don't have to be enemies, or we don't have to fight over minute things like that. But hey, here's my thought. Be careful about what you listen to.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wanna maybe take a stab at most of the music, the music industry, not only the music industry, now even the movie industry. I was reading something the other day which made me think a lot. Have you noticed that in most movies, they try to always have some type of women who are naked in some type of way?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's just like, okay, there was no point of showing that at this particular scene. Like, there was no point to this. And I was reading an article yesterday that was actually explaining that Hollywood producers or whatever, they understand that men are naturally wired to look, right? Men are attracted by what they see. And in order for them to retain more audience, they need to create some posters, some type of stuff that have attractive women on, so that men can be hooked to their TVs. And when men are hooked to their TVs, their whole family is hooked to the TVs.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I thought about it, and it's just made me realize that be careful about what you consume. If you feel that you're always in a pattern of depression, you're always sad, you are always this and that, and but what you consume, I mean, not only what you listen to, not only what you watch, but even what you tell yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's also consumption, right? If you keep on repeating the same thoughts to yourself, you're pretty much consuming your own thoughts. And there is another principle here, and I know, Adam, we have a lot to say about this, because it pretty much has to deal with neuroscience here. It said the reticular activating system, right, is the part of your brain, a physical portion of your brain, that groups information based on similarity and relevance. So the reason why, and I've always loved this example, when you find that your friend bought a red Tesla and you haven't seen one of those before, all of a sudden, everybody on the street is driving a red Tesla.
Pretty much, yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
It's like your friend has this phone and you haven't seen that phone before. All of a sudden, everybody and everything you see, someone has the same example. You start noticing it. If those things just appear, no, they've always been there, but you just never paid attention to them. And it's the same thing with your thought. The reason why some people can walk into a room and see business opportunities, and some other people walk into the same room and see problems, is because of what your thoughts are always focusing on. And every time like you lead your thought a certain way, they start grouping information in a way that it makes it relevant to the brain. It makes it easier for the brain to recall information. And even the Guarantee 4.0, it talks about that, about how you need to study in a way that your brain can make connection without you making the effort. You let your brain do the work. It's a benefit to you, but it can also be dangerous. And the danger is, once you start developing a pattern of negative thoughts, those thoughts start finding things in your brain. It's like, once you start saying to yourself, I'm not smart, right? Your brain will start looking for evidence to prove what you believe. And that's why you got to be careful about what you consume, what you hear, what you watch, but also what you tell yourself every day.
Yeah, and just in that point there on what you watch or what you believe, what you watch, and then how that's affecting you. There's a quote by Jesus actually Jesus said that it's not what get into man that defiles him, but what comes out that defiles him. And this goes with the principle of thoughts. Usually what happens is that you have a certain thought, your brain is start getting wired in a certain type of way. And then once that is seated there, then you start noticing things.
Right.
And when you start noticing things, you start associating with those things.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
You start associating yourself to that. You start becoming your favorite music. It start becoming, okay, these days, man, I'm feeling just this artist.
Right.
Like, man, like these days, like it's just this artist, man. Like, he's just been really hitting me. Like, I've really like, you know what and it becomes really a part of the conversation that you're entertaining to yourself, because it's all started with a thought. And then you start noticing things. You start feeling like, hey, this is a need that I need to supply help with. I need to really get into it. And I think Craig Groeschel here is actually talking about a story of his grandmother and money. They used to have good story with his grandma, and then one day his grandma just introduces a story that was scary. Yeah. And he was a young boy.
About the Great Depression.
And it all became about money. And so his life started turning around the principle of the scarcity. He started thinking like, oh my gosh, the Great Depression might happen again. And if it happens, I'm going to find myself without any money, without any means. And even when he has a lot of money, all this stuff, like literally you open a menu, because you've wired your brain a certain way, you just go look for the side of things that you feel like
is the cheapest
thing. And your brain rewards you for it.
Yep.
You know, you feel good. You feel above everybody. Think about like, you know, it's basically almost the same stuff that with like gang members do. It's the same stuff that people who feel morally superior to others do. Same thing with even like a lot of the extremism that we are facing in the world, in such a way that it starts with a thought. A person entertains that thought for it doesn't even take that long. It's just one thought. You've entertained it, you've thought about it, and then you act on it. And by acting on it can be as simple as just listen to one song about it. And now you start associating these different things. The next thing you know, it actually start determining the type of people you spend time with.
That's right.
It start determining what you support as a person, what you stand for as a person. From something as simple as one thought become one music. There's one thing that JP one day was preaching. He said that basically, you know, the Bible is saying that watch your heart, because from there that comes the word of life. And stuff like protect your heart and stuff like that. And he told the story that a lot of people, a lot of the young ladies will come and in front of the church and ask him and like, hey man, I've just been dating losers and just dating losers. And he's like, and he asked them, what do you listen to? What have you been entertaining? He's like, come on, just the regular music. He's like, humor me, like just let me know. Right. And he goes that, oh, you know, I've just been listening to some Nicki Minaj, like I can buy myself flowers. And he goes, okay, so you've been listening to you can buy yourself flowers, you can take yourself to the movies. If that's the thought that you've been entertaining, if that is the music that you've associated with your life at that particular time, it means that you are not opening up any possibility for a person that has value, for a person that would be good for you to actually be there in a relationship with you. So it goes bigger from just a thought that probably took less than 1 second to build. But it becomes more powerful when that thought has connected with an association. Like it's something like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about this. And I just heard that song. and you start noticing it.
Right.
Actually, interesting. This, in my field, is the biggest thing. This is how innovation happens. This is how we spend the last 25 years. If I factor it in, I've really literally been in school for the last 24 years, right? The last 24 years, I've accumulated knowledge. Tremendous amount of knowledge that I've accumulated. But innovation is not coming from all of that knowledge that I'm accumulating all this time. What happened is, one day, I'll be somewhere, something will trigger a thought. Once that thought is seeded in my brain, it connects with every other thing that I have learned before. It's created this path. You never understand how it happened. And now I'm suddenly, at least that's how my brain works, is that I just got one idea.
No, it's everybody's. That the power of association in your brain
it's connected with everything I've learned before. Man, it's connected with history. History, physics, philosophy. Everything comes together and kind of just work together.
Right.
To become like as a mean to a big end. And that's how a lot of my ideas come to be.
Exactly. And that's, when you think about someone like Archimedes, or you think about whatever, the guy that discovered the gravity, I think it was Newton.
Isaac Newton, yeah.
When he sees the apple falling and he's like, oh my God, this is it. It's not at that particular moment that he discovered it. No. Is the accumulated knowledge and everything that has been built. And, it works both positively, but also negatively, right? I knew this before. And then when I read it in this book, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Because you think about it, every time you believe something, every time you think about something over and over, your mind, we always start looking for evidence to prove that what you believe is true.
Yeah.
I saw this lady at Dr. Phil's show. They said she suffered from some type of sicknesses or something, but it was psychological. She believed she was Caucasian.
Wow.
I mean, she looked like me. She looks like me. and her parents are black. Her grandparents are black. But she believed she was Caucasian. And you think to yourself, well, she's crazy. Maybe not. Maybe she's not. But how did that start? One thought.
Yeah.
One thought then led to another, then led to another. Multiple association until this becomes like your new reality. I'll give you another example. It's like, have you ever seen people that argue for no reason? Like I remember this made a noise at some point. The Earth is flat.
Yeah, it's still out there.
And it's still out there.
It's big out there.
People still believe that the Earth is flat. It doesn't matter how many pictures you bring them. It doesn't matter how you tell them. It doesn't matter why. Because it's one thought, and then they've entertained the thought that they started creating connections. And every time they see something that goes in the same direction, it's like, oh my God, what did I say? Why? It's not because you just discovered something. No, it's always been there. But because of the association that you're creating in your mind, it start creating that. It start doing the same thing to you. So, Craig Groeschel talks about his wake-up call, right? He talks about when he was in a restaurant with his daughter, and then his daughter didn't want to order a meal because she thought, quote-unquote, the meal was too expensive. And then he realized that, unbeknownst to him, he had been passing all this negativity that his grandmother passed to him. He had been passing it to his children without even realizing he was doing that. And that's the danger of thoughts. It's because your attitude, the way you conduct yourself, is contagious. And this is one of the reasons, again, why, again, I may not agree with everybody here again, but I seriously believe that we should love everybody we meet. We should try as much as we can to be good to everybody we meet. However, we should be very careful with whom we spend our time.
Yeah.
I try to love everybody I meet. I do love everybody I meet. I do try to respect and give respect to everybody that I meet in life, but I'm very careful with whom I spend my time, because it doesn't matter how you try to paint it. It doesn't matter how you try to describe it. You start thinking and behaving the way the people around you think and behave. It's just a reality. And if you're not thinking and behaving like them yet, just hang on. It's a matter of time before you catch up.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that at some point, one of you will have to influence the other. Either you will have a good influence on them, or they will have some influence on you. And most of the times, you find yourself, I don't think like there's like a neutral place where it's like you're neither influencing nor being influenced while you're spending as much time together. No, there's no way. At some point, you start talking. I remember, I don't curse. I don't curse. And I'll tell you why. First of all, the Bible tells me that no foolish conversation should come out of my mouth. So that's one of my reasons. But secondly, one of my mentors, Tyson Bounty, one time I was talking to him and he told me, I don't curse. I was like, why? And he said, the English language is full of words. And there are so many ways to express my frustration without cursing.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very solid argument to not cursing at all. But anyways, if you curse, that's your thing, right? I'm not here to judge you. That's your thing, but I just don't. But then one time I worked in a company for 2 years. I was working as a computer repair tech and software tester. But then I worked with a lot of people that were from the military. We worked for 7 months together. And as you know, you spend more time with your coworkers than you spend with your family most of the times. Yeah. And I'll tell you, one day, I'm just driving down the street, and this guy would curse, every other word. I think they curse more than they spoke. Like, in a sentence of 5 words, there'd probably be 7 curse words. I'm like, okay, just slow down. And one day I remember someone cut me off the traffic. I did not even think, and a curse word came out of my mouth. It's at that point that I realized that as much as I was trying to block that negative influence from getting to me, to some extent, it had made its way to my brain. Of course, if you're in a situation where you don't just quit your job because people are cursing around you, it wouldn't be too smart, especially if you don't have another job. If you have the option to get another job, yes, that's better. But then it made me realize how much negative influence those people were having around me. You know, at least as far as my language was concerned, they were good people, just curse a lot. It's the same way that when you spend a lot of your time with people that are thinking a certain way, that are doing things a certain way, before you know it, you start thinking and behaving the way you do. As a matter of fact, I think is Paul or Solomon in the Bible. I think the book of Proverbs. He said that Paul said that do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good matter.
Yeah.
But Solomon said that if you want to be wise, walk with the wise.
Yep.
If you want to be intelligent, walk with the intelligent. You start catching up on their ways of doing things and their ways of finishing up. And I think this is the last point that he makes here. But then he gives this exercise here, right? I want to talk about something else, but I'll probably talk about it in the future. The 3 sources of change, right? The first one that I wrote down here, people change because they're afraid. The doctor told you if you don't lose 20 pounds by the next month, you're going to die. Then you go start eating the gym, the motivation comes in. The second sort of motivation, Zig Ziglar talks about intrinsic motivation, right? It's the type of motivation where you are motivated because there is a reward to it. And then if you finish up your project, you're going to Seattle. And then it's like, you know what? I'll finish it up tonight. There's the intrinsic motivation. The problem with intrinsic motivation is that it only works as long as you're hungry enough and the reward is big enough. The day where you're full, like, I've been to Seattle already twice. I don't want to go there. It's too rainy, it's too cold. I'm not going there. Then it doesn't work anymore. But it's the third type of motivation, which is the greatest and the best, is growth motivation. You grow enough that you decide to change, right? And this is where we want to get and to the wake-up call that Craig Groeschel is talking about here. If you are sick and tired of being sick and tired of the way your life is, then it's time to make a change because you've grown enough, you've assimilated enough knowledge that you are thinking now, you know what? It's time for me to start doing things differently. Don't change because you're afraid. Don't change because there is, a reward to wait in the future. Change because you are growing enough. And that's the only change that you can sustain. And it finished up here with this exercise where he asks us to identify our roots, to identify the roots, the thoughts that are deeply embedded. And we did some of it in the first part of the book, where you ask yourself the question. But whenever you see a behavior, these are a few questions that I would like to leave you with. Craig Groeschel doesn't talk a lot about questions, but this is something that went back in the days. Can you believe I wanted to be a journalist?
Well, I can see how that could happen.
Back in the days, I wanted to be a journalist. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be at CNN or Fox News. I don't know. Probably both of them would have failed me by now. But anyways, a friend of mine or a big brother of mine, his name is Ore Bulambo in Goma. He was mentoring me back then, coaching me, and he taught me this technique that I'll never forget. 3WH. Where did that thought start? Or where did it start, right? Or where does it happen? The second W is when. When does it happen? At what time? Do you start behaving? Do you have anger issues when you're sick, when you're depressed? Do you have alcohol problems when you have a problem at work? Or do you drink when you have a problem at work? When does it happen? When does it happen? Where does it happen? The third is why. Why does it happen? What is the root cause of your thought? And then the last one is how does it happen? And I use this a lot when in the past when I struggle a lot with masturbation, and I talked about this before. I had to go down to understand exactly when, where, why, and how it was starting. And it's the same way with your behavior. Until you can short circuit the behavior, the thought at its origin, it will be much more difficult to change the behavior. But if you start understanding this is where this behavior happens, this is why it happens. It's like on a Friday night, I'm out with my friend and then I start swapping my credit card and then I lose control and then I'm back in debt. Yes, then on Friday, don't go out, right? If Friday is the source of it, then you discover this is the when it happens and this is the where it happens, right? If you're having issues with mall, I know some people have issues going to the mall. Don't go to the mall. Just don't go. You want to go to the mall, order online. If online becomes a problem, don't give yourself a discipline to cut your credit card and buy everything with cash. You can buy with cash online. Now you have to force yourself to go to the grocery store. Things like that, but you can only address those behavior when you understand where it's coming from. And we're really coming to the top of the hour here. It went by really fast. All right. we go through chapter 5 quickly here, and then we finish up with chapter 6 on our next episode. All right. You wanna tackle chapter 5?
Yeah, I think to start off chapter 5, I think he's talking about creating a trench of truth. And I think it's you kind of just led us directly to this, where the definition of the problem. Before actually trying to solve a problem, you got to be able to define that problem. And you don't define a problem or you don't solve a problem by dealing with its consequences.
Yep.
You define a problem or you solve a problem by dealing with its causes, right? So you don't go to the behavior for you to actually start creating solutions to the behavior, because you are gonna end up falling into those problems, into kind of the trap of a cycle. And then what happens when you fail, especially when it comes to behavioral changes, is that when you fail big time.
Oh yeah.
It's like you see. I think growing up in church, actually, they used to tell us that whenever they kick out the demons from you, they go call like seven other demons, right? Yeah. So and I think what they meant with that is basically that whenever you have reached a behavior that you are able to actually start making an improvement on it, when you fail,
You feel big.
Yeah, when you feel like, have you seen somebody who relapses from like
It's
an
bad.
addiction?
It's bad.
It's worse. It's worse because why? It's something that is. I mean, the whole process is set on you changing your behavior, and it doesn't go to the root cause of things to actually making some changes. And of course, Craig Groeschel goes through a lot of things here. Personally, excuse me, when I had just growing up in general, growing up in a Christian home, one of the things that has helped me throughout the years is that, of course, you choose this thought that you're gonna entertain.
Yep.
And you can say as much, you can kind of like, say as much as you can on censoring music for kids and stuff like that, as much as you can. But for me, I'm like a huge fan of censoring music for kids. My music was censored when I was growing up. In our house, we had actually my parents were even strict on modern Christian music. So
the whole TV was
censored. we didn't have a TV. We actually grew up with a 14-inch TV that did not have any channels on it, like pretty much. So we had no cable, we had no channels on it. My mom, we had a 14-inch TV. My mom used to buy these CDs. Actually, when I was growing up, it was before CDs. We had the VHS. We had the VHS. Yeah. Oh, man, it's such a long time ago. We had the VHS, and my mom had this VHS, and she could take it, and, she had these Christian songs that she was using for us to actually be listening to. And that's basically what defined our lives, was just listening to the VHS whatever songs.
Right.
And those songs were usually hymns from hundreds of years ago. So the first thing that comes
that was
to mind,
torture.
Yeah, it was. So we did not have, we had restriction over modern Christian songs. It was crazy that I think I think I mentioned this, that I didn't discover what is the name?
Jonathan
McReynolds until January this year. You can think, but I knew people like Alan Jackson.
Yep.
I knew people like Guy Penrod. It basically was what those are the songs that that build together.
Right.
Yeah, that's the type of stuff that I grew up with. And why is that? Later on, when now I'm starting battling all of these issues and I'm actually realizing that, hey, my life is not going well, it's about time to start finding the root cause of these issues. It got singled down to thought. And my solution to it, like where he's talking about like the truth to it, we're adding the truth to it. My way was just remixing, and he's talking about it in the next chapter, but just bringing out a lot of those songs from that very, very long time ago. I'm telling you, we used to call them cantiques inspirés, that's inspired songs. When you sing an inspired song, compared to even the modern Christian songs, when you sing an inspired song, it set a whole other mood. Whether you were driving, or you were at home, or you were alone, or it's set a whole different mood to the time, and you get away.
Right.
You get away for that day. And if you can just start now associating that,
that's right,
to a certain neural pathway, that, hey, whenever you're feeling this way, this is the song that you're gonna lead yourself to, or these are the type of stuff you're gonna connect with. Songs are the easiest things. That's why philosophers like Socrates said music should be censored for the youth. Why? Because songs are the easiest way there. I can tell you to go read a book here, or I can start telling you even to memorize verses in the Bible. They probably won't come to you as quickly
as a song will.
I
think a person actually said like songs are like the door to your soul. Because the emotions that are carried through songs go a little deeper than regular things. And I think that's the biggest picture that Craig Groeschel is trying to bring out of this chapter here. Creating that trench of truth is really by identifying the lies, first of all, because the 2 points that Craig Groeschel makes here say that you need to remove the lie at the root, but you also need to replace the neural pathway that leads to the lie, right? So the neural pathway that leads to the lie is pretty much what I was talking about a minute ago, and we talked about this throughout this show today, is the habit stacking, right? It's one habit that creates an association and leads to another habit. But until like you understand the why, the when, the where, and the how it starts, if you can understand the source and its origin, then it's much easier for you to remove it. And again, I've given this example again and again, and I'll just explain why and when and how and where it was for me. I came to understand that most of my temptation with pornography came at night, right? When did it come? Night. What time of the year? It was mostly around a time where I was stressed. I was usually stressed around my finals. I was usually stressed around my exam. And that's when I was facing my biggest temptations. Where was it happening? In my bedroom. Because of course you're by yourself and nobody's watching over you. And little things like that, understanding that. I understood that, when I'm stressed on a Friday, you know what? I have a final tomorrow. I'm going to play basketball tonight. Release all that stress, release all that sweat. By the time I come back home, my brain is no longer carrying all this stress in my mind. And by just doing little things like that, it got to a point where it was no longer a struggle. It was no longer even a thought that we traverse my mind or anything of that nature. And then Craig Groeschel talks about here replacing the lie with the truth. Of course, you identify the trigger, then you find the truth to short circuit the lie. And in my case, and maybe in Adam's case as well, is mostly the Bible, right? We go to the Bible, and the Bible is kind of all the answers to most all human problems. To be honest, you'll find a truth, a verse, or whatever. But then, if you're not coming from a Christian background, or if you're not coming from a religious background altogether, the other thing that I always encourage people to do is to start creating this confession list, right? And Craig Groeschel gives a lot of examples about things he created for himself that are helping him, even financially. And now this is what you do, right? With your confession list. And I think we talked about this, or maybe I mentioned this when I was reading the book, The Answer by Joseph Asaraf and his co-author, Murray Smith. Here's what happens, right? You speak the truth, you write the truth, you think about your truth, and then you confess it, right? So the process is to write it, think it, and confess it. That's what Craig Groeschel is suggesting here. Now, I just discovered as well, just reading Dr. Caroline Leaf's book, that when you write, I'm not talking about typing, I'm not talking about texting on your phone, but when you take a pen and paper and you start writing, there's actually a lot of things that happen in your brain. And one of the things is that your mind becomes clear when you're putting your thoughts on paper, especially when you're using your hand to do that exercise, even when you're typing. So every time there's a lot of stuff in your head going on, and that's why we encourage you on this podcast to journal. It's very important. When there's a lot of stuff going on in your head and you're stressed down, take a pen and paper and start writing down every single thought that's traversing your mind at a time. But now, about the confession, right? Joseph Asaraf actually tells a story. Joseph Asaraf was actually doing very bad in school, from his story. He was doing very poorly in school, and one day, this gentleman who became his mentor asked him, he was like, Joseph, why are you always troublesome at school? He was like, I don't know. Then he asked him, he was like, what do you want to be in life? And he said nobody had ever asked him that question before. So he said he thought about it for a second, and then he was like, I want to do this, I want to be this and this and this. The gentleman told him, write down everything that you want to be. So he wrote down everything, and then he told him 2 things. He said, every day, 3 times a day, I want you to read this to yourself. Don't read it silently. Put your finger to it and start reading it to yourself. You see, you write things like, I'm a person who's always on time, and you know that you're always that guy that shows up 2 hours late. He said, write it down. So he started writing everything he wanted to be. He started repeating that to himself every single day. He started repeating that to himself. He said, now there was this conflict created in his mind. I'm saying that I'm a person who tells the truth, but I'm right here, I'm about to lie. And that conflict started happening in his mind. And then he was like, no, every time he was tempted to lie or do something, the thought would come to his mind, I'm a person who tells the truth. So the thoughts changed and the behavior started adapting to the change of the thought, right? And once you start confessing what you've written by yourself, you confess, for example, that you are not a slave to lust or whatever. You confess that alcohol cannot control you. Every time you start confessing that, and the reason why you want to confess that more often is that when that negativity or that opportunity comes where you're tempted to do something that goes against your belief, the confession will play back in your mind and give you more power. Give you more power over whatever behavior that you're trying to abandon. Give you more power over whatever things that you're trying to fight against. As a matter of fact, Dr. Leaf, she actually gives this suggestion. She said to do the breathing exercise, and she says that when you inhale, you say to yourself, think, feel. And when you exhale for 7 seconds, you say choose. And doing that, just pausing and breathing for like 10 seconds or whatever, can actually help your mind become much clearer when you are faced with a behavior you're trying to abandon. It gives you power over your thoughts. And if you have power over your thoughts, you eventually have power over your behavior. So it says this: write it, think it, confess it. The other thing that Joseph Asaraf is meant to tell them to do is say, record yourself reading this and then listen to yourself. It's an amazing exercise. And one thing else I like to do when I'm listening to myself, I try to think about what I'm saying. Because you can be listening to yourself and be distracted, especially in this technology world, man. You can be on your phone or whatever, but actually try sometimes to just think. And most of my confession list, my personal confession list, actually are scriptures from the Bible. So I just apply them to me, whatever the Bible says, I apply them to me. And every time, when, for example, the Bible says that you always be the head and not the tail, right? I'll listen to it and try to think over what I'm saying. And there's something powerful when you're listening to yourself. There's something that I don't know. That some people hate listening to themselves, but I love listening to myself. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, maybe I should have not said that there, But something that I've practiced, something that I've put down, and I'm listening to myself, it's definitely mind changing. So write it, think it, confess it.
I think I'm gonna just hit a little bit here on confessing it parts, because that has been such a huge part of my life. Just saying it out loud and confessing it so that you can believe it. There is this goes almost in everything actually. So usually there's something that's actually learned from Grace on this part of things, and it's called it's about identification. And so one thing she does is that when normal people, like everybody else, will be just like, I'm sick. It's a confession, actually.
It is a confession.
It's a confession. When you say, I'm sick, it's a confession. It's a confession that goes with an identity. You're identifying as a sick person.
Exactly. And to add to what you're just saying, and you keep going, is like, have you heard some people say, oh man, these migraines of mine, it's like, they've on them now. Yes. It's just part of them.
It's theirs. It's basically that. And the way Grace puts it, she never says I'm sick. She says I am feeling sick, and I have learned that. And when you say I am sick, you are confessing, and you are identifying with that sickness, and the behavior that follows is basically you being weak. You're being beat down. But when she says, or when I say, I am feeling sick, feelings are temporary things. You catch it, it goes away. It doesn't stay there for the longest time. It's one thing that I've learned, and I have applied also to my life, and not just at that level, but now at a very bigger scale, where this confession in high school, I used to do some of these jokes with friends. Actually, it wasn't a joke. I was being very serious. I'll pull out $20. $20 in Congo is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I pull out $20. This is my 1 week money that's going to take me home and going to buy me lunch and all of that stuff back home, back in Congo. I'll take the $20, I put it on the table, and I go around the class. I'm like, hey, bring me whatever math exercise that's you want to solve that you feel like it's hard. Put it on the board. I'm going to give you one. Either way, if I fail yours, I still give you the 20. And if you get mine right, I'm still going to give you the 20. A lot of people think that I'm being very prideful. But it wasn't that. I was just enjoyed putting myself on the spot. Confessing that to myself that, hey, I am very good at math. I used to be terrible at math. That's another story for another day. I was really bad at math. I failed math my first year in high school. So terrible. But now, fast forward 12th grade, I'm telling people that, hey, if anybody could solve any problem, open up your textbook. That would be me. I can do it. I'm able to do it. And I consistently repeat those stuff to myself until now. I don't count myself out. I really just don't do that. The only thing that I do, I confess it. The Bible actually says that Jesus is the high priest of our confession, which means if you claim that you've been healed, you actually will be healed. If you claim that you have received something, you actually gonna end up receiving it. The more you repeat it to yourself, the more you confess it, the more you say out loud and in front of people, the more you put yourself on the spot, your body is subjected to respond.
And it forces you to go to work.
It
forces you to go to work, and that's the reality about confessions.
So much in line.
So much in the line. I mean, it's so hard to confess something and leave something completely different.
Yeah.
At some point, it's just like your mind can't take it anymore. Either two things will happen. Either you stop confessing it because it's just like, no, I can't. I can't be saying that I tell the truth all the time, but I lie all the time. Or you stop lying. And those are usually the two things that happen to you. And to conclude with this episode, it's even the way you respond to greetings. I learned this from Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar, he gave some of these motivational speeches. He said, when they say, how you doing, Zig Ziglar? He say, I am doing great. He says, he say, well, Zig, what if you're not feeling great? He's like, well, I'm just confessing in advance. I'm not lying, I'm confessing in advance. And I remember, and I still do it a lot when people ask me, how you doing? Even when I'm not feeling that great, I'll just be like, I'm great. And the simple fact that I'm saying that I'm great makes me feel great.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, 9 out of 10. I'll literally start feeling great from the time I start, just the way I respond. Yeah. So, I hate, well, I won't say I hate. Yeah, I kind of hate. I hate when people tell me like, I'm just here under the weather, I'm just hanging on there. Yes, I mean, it's all good. But every time I hear someone like giving me a great greeting, like responding to me with excitement, I feel energized. I feel I want to talk to this person.
It's very contagious.
It's very contagious. And I remember they used to call me crazy when I used to go to the office because I was always excited on Mondays. I don't know. I was always excited on Mondays.
Okay.
Mondays are not the funnest day. Trust me.
No.
They are not. But I found excitement in Mondays. Why? Because I went to bed every night believing. I actually read the first book I read about John, it was the second, from John Maxwell, Think on These Things. he actually has a chapter that say, "Yay, it's Monday." And it talks about how to be excited on Monday. He say you go to bed on Sunday at a decent time, and then you say it's Monday. When you wake up in the morning on Monday, you say, yes, it's Monday. And I started really enjoying my Mondays, and people will be like, how you doing, Mark? I am doing fabulous. It's Monday. Can you believe it? And people are like, oh yeah, it's Monday. It's just like, it all depends on where you're coming from. And the biggest portion of everything comes from your confession. So be careful about what you think. Be careful about what you hear. Be careful about what you consume. And be careful about what you say. Because there are powerful voices in the universe, but I don't think there's any voice in your life more powerful than your own voice. Because you see, a man once said that nobody can make you feel inferior unless you give them the permission to do so.
Yeah.
Internally, at some point, you have given them that permission. Internally, whether you know it or not, whether you want it or not, at some point, people make you feel the way you do because you've given them that permission. And the day you want to stop that, you stand up to the bullies and you tell them, no, this is it. And this is how slavery ended. This is how racism did not end, but at least some justice were made to it. This is how people like Martin Luther King stood up and say, you know what? Enough is enough. We got to change the way we do things. And you don't have to be Martin Luther King. You don't have to be Mother Teresa. You don't have to be Abraham Lincoln. You don't have to be any of those great figures. But you can start today taking revolt over your thoughts and changing the way you think. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that it is with this that we'll be ending today. It was really a pleasure to be back here with Adam. I know we've gone a little bit over time today, just because of the excitement and many things that we had to catch up on. I've been promising to talk to you next week, but today I won't promise to talk to you next week because then I've realized that I keep on breaking my promises. But until next time, for our 11th episode, we'll be glad to have you here. Again, if you have any real estate needs in the DFW area, don't hesitate to reach out to our sponsor and realtor, Realtor Judith. If you haven't been to our website, or if you're not subscribed to our mailing list where we send you some growth nuggets, some growth tips, things that can help you grow, check out our website, www.unboundedgrowth.org/subscribe. If you want to support the work that we're doing in Congo with the kids, we've received a lot of donations, and I think sometimes we'll be giving some shout outs to some people that are helping us out there. Mr. Serge, thank you so much, allowing us to send the kid to school this year with his contribution was very, very, very helpful. So God bless you all for everything that you're doing. If you want to support this work, you can visit again www.unboundedgrowth.org/donate, where you can find all the information and all the work that we're doing out there. We're actually putting together an article to tell you a little bit about the stories of the kids that we are supporting, the work that we are doing, the work that is being done at Bora Technology. Naomi is here. We didn't even have time to talk about that, but she's already here. Some of the scholars from Bora Technology that have moved to the United States. So we are really thrilled and the work that we are doing, and there's a lot more coming in the next future, in the next few weeks, in the next months, in the next year. And I can't wait to really have Mr. Hussein Abdallah on the podcast. And we talk about real estate, we talk about investment and how to retire and what are the things that you can do to improve your life and improve your future. That's it for me, Adam.
Yeah, and just another announcement along those lines. If you are listening to us and you are Congolese or you are in Congo, we are looking for Bora scholars. We have about 5 spots. So that's a lot of PhDs. The goal with Bora scholars is to graduate 10 PhDs within the next 5 years. And to basically to enhance and drive the conversation of a research in the Congo. So the idea is, if you know anybody or you are in Congo, people from Goma, a lot of people from Goma do speak English. So a lot of people from Goma who could be hearing us, people from Kinshasa, Bandundu, Bakong, anywhere, Kasai. If you know anybody who is trying to get a PhD in engineering or science, so engineering or science, can reach out to us directly. You can actually even reach out to us through the Unbounded Growth website. Just reach out to us and we can set you up. We've had also great donors. We've had people who have really tremendously helped. So this is fully funded, so you don't even have to worry about much. We can even work with you on your travel expenses and so on, and where you're gonna stay, all those stuff. We are working as Bora Scholars to be able to support you. The Bora Scholars website also should be up within the next week or so. So feel free to go on there. Right now it's still up. The short application is there, but the main official website should be up within the next week or so. So feel free to just look into the website and fill out the form and submit it. It's boratechnology.org/scholars. So if you go on there, you should be able to find the form and more information about it. But reach out, and once you reach out, we can get back to you with all the details that you might need.
Absolutely. And if your PhD is something that you want to achieve, this is a free opportunity. It doesn't come too many times in life. Take advantage of it. And you already have Adam, who's helped a lot of students here. And, sometimes the challenge is you don't know where to start, but you know where to start. Just email, right? Send an email. You can send an email to info@unboundedgrowth.org or info@boratechnology.org. We can still get back to you. We'll put to you the correct email, the correct links to everything that we've talked about here, and we let you know how you can get that. With that being said, God bless you. We'll be seeing you next week. We'll be seeing you next time for our 11th episode. Bye-bye.